We will get started. Just to give you a quick overview of what we're looking at today, excuse me, I'll give you an overview of some of the most common technical interview expectations. So what typically happens in a technical interview, what type of activities that you're given. We'll look at those design challenges. Then we'll look at the main focus, which is the whiteboard challenge. There are two types. We'll look at them. And then I'd love to run you through a quick exercise. Either we'll do that as a group, or we'll try and do that in breakout rooms. There will be a lot of you, so breakout rooms might get messy. I'd love to do it ideally in pairs where you can get to meet each other and interact and role play using the framework that I'm about to show you. The alternative is we do it together and we'll still have fun. And I've also added an appendix section to this presentation just to give you some more tips and resources. If you are on the job hunt, searching for jobs and interested in learning more about technical interviews, they are a common part of UX and product design. So we have to get familiar with them. Like I said, the chat window is open. If you do have any questions, I hope we will have time for Q&A at the end. I'm happy to get through any questions that you have at the end with time permitting. So please feel free as I go along. Any questions that come up, just add them into the chat window, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. Cool. I do see a few familiar names floating around here, which is good. For those of you that don't know me, I've been with Designlab for 4 years, maybe. Prior to that, I've had a long career in the design industry, in various locations, various industries. And I've moved into design education where I actually teach UX, design thinking, and product management at a couple of other places. But I mentor only with Designlab because the people are great, the curriculum makes sense, and why not? If you would like to connect, I encourage you all to connect with each other as well. It's good to build a strong community. Some of you are in the same city, if not the same state or the same part of the world. So please do share your LinkedIn profiles, or unless you're all on Discord somewhere. Otherwise, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to connect and introduce you to alumni and other students from around the world that I work with. So that's my LinkedIn right there. Instagram's not for everyone, but if you're into that sort of thing, go for it. Feel free. I don't mind. But building a strong community is something that we're all a part of and we'd love to contribute to. So let's connect. Awesome. Thanks, Amara, for sharing your LinkedIn post. We will all connect at the end as well. Just an overview. We typically there you might see 4 different types of I guess deliverables within the technical interview process. I've put stars next to the 2 most common ones, the one at the top and the one at the bottom. I'll get to them shortly, but in any job interview process, some of them, depending on the role that you've applied for, you might be asked to provide some type of workshop facilitation. And that's, as the name suggests, that's you showcasing, demonstrating your skills to lead and run a workshop of some type. Typically, they're more for like senior roles. I haven't seen too many junior roles asking for that. Aurelia, yes, we will be sharing the slides in PDF and the recording as well. All good. Another type of thing is planning user research. Again, not too common, but depending on the type of role you've applied for, let's say you've applied for one day a senior UX role, you will be potentially asked to provide your sort of knowledge and skills in planning user research, and I'll show you what that's about on another slide, what that entails. Design critiques are quite common, where they'll give you some existing design and they'll ask you for your critique on that, and you'll be expected to use existing best practice heuristics, things like that, to audit and evaluate an existing design. That could be one of their own designs, or it could be just a random thing. Like I've had students being given a design critique for, they were shown a video of kids playing in a school playground, and they were asked to critique the equipment and the overall sort of playground experience versus just a simple app to help people exercise, and you then have to run through that process. And the design challenges to showcase your thinking and approach for a given problem. These are quite common. Most of you will encounter a design challenge in one way, shape, or form. Most recently, from my experience, I've seen a number of people be given a take-home design challenge where they'll give you 3 days or a week to take that design challenge and then bring it back and present it to them. I'll show you an example shortly of a student of mine who recently was given a design challenge to take home. I always find it interesting. And then the other thing is, and what we're going to practice today, is the on-site or live in-person design challenge, where you'll share your screen. It might be virtual, or you'll be in a room with a whiteboard behind you as well. And you'll be given a problem or a prompt to solve. Just to quickly give you a rough overview, design critiques, they are a version of a whiteboard challenge. You can have a look at what it says on the right-hand side. That's what you would need to consider. Like if I said to you, here's XYZ company's website, our homepage, and you have to critique that for us. If I asked you to do that on the spot in the room, or on a call like this, what would you have to work with? It's mostly assumptions based, right? You can't go out and conduct user research. You can't test anything. So you'll have to put on your thinking hat and think about how you would use the UX process. And you might have to rely on usability principles. You might have to rely on heuristics. You might have to ask some questions with the interviewer and say, well, why do you want to do this? Or what is your business goal? How would you define success? And you would run through that Q&A with the interviewer to try and extract as much information as you can. And then you would talk about how you would do it. Right? So like, what are you trying to critique here and why? And you have to connect that to some sort of business goal. So for example, they might say, here's a landing page. We're trying to get people to sign up to our program where they'll receive a nutrition plan. And everything you say after that would have to connect back to that. So you might say, well, I'm looking at your inquiry form. What I would do here is the following. I would evaluate the UI design of the inquiry form. I would test the structure, the copywriting, and we'll set some sort of baseline. We'll say, okay, you want to get 100 inquiries per month. Here's what we need to do to get there. So you'll critique that as you move along. You might have to sketch out your process as well with a design critique. It's not always a document of some sort. You might be able to sketch out your process, your thought pattern. What I've found, and feel free to sketch this out or take a screenshot if you like right now. Over the past couple of years, we've had a number of students who have found these sorts of templates quite useful. So if I did give you that prompt and said, hey, critique this for us, how would you do it? This type of template actually works quite well, and you can customize this template depending on the prompt you've been given. Like if I gave you the kids playing in a school playground prompt to critique versus an app for healthy eating or exercise, you could customize this any way you want. And what we've found is this type of thing helps you visualize your process, and it shows them, the hiring managers, how you're organized, how you keep yourself organized, and how you think through things. So if you did this, you will score bonus points. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer for when you critique something. So having this type of structure, and I would suggest you, and if you don't already have this, but create your own FigJam board, your own Notion board, your own Miro board, whatever it is, where you have these sorts of templates, like a library of resources that you can call upon for every job interview or if you're practicing. So a number of students have gone to job interviews where they've created these sorts of resources. The other thing I've found is, and I don't have it with me here, but I do have a little book. It's a small leather-bound book. It's kind of like my design Bible, if I can call it that, where it's like a cheat sheet. It's my cheat book. And I have pages and pages of like glossaries and definitions and examples of things. So you can take that with you It's like an open book exam. It's okay for you to take that with you. Take some sort of booklet with you, a journal, take your laptop with you. That's fine. You're allowed to refer back to something else for design challenges. I'll talk more about that during whiteboard challenges, but you're allowed to find external sources. So if you need to bring up your FigJam board and work through that on the spot, that's great. It actually shows them how organized you are. So again, I can't speak highly enough of these sorts of templates. If anyone's ever used like a lean canvas before, like a business model canvas or a lean UX canvas, same sort of concept here, same sort of thinking. And we'll come back to this. User research challenges, I won't go too deep in this, but you can kind of see from that bullet list there. I'll focus on the last 3 bullet points because they're probably the most important. If you are ever asked to showcase your research skills for a job you've applied for, sometimes you might have to conduct some sort of role play or mock interview or usability test session. If you go for a user research role, they might give you something like this. I've had cases where they've thrown some post-its on the table and they've said, okay, go and affinity map this and let's work through that. And you're expected to collaborate with people in that room. They might bring in a junior designer, they might bring in a senior designer in that room to help you role play, whatever the case is. They just want to see your thought process. Again, there's no right or wrong. So I'll get to that as well shortly. So if you are given a user research challenge, always think about how you would approach it. Remember, you don't have access to users right there in that room. So how would you conduct research? If they say to you the prompt is about how teachers teach students in an elementary school, well, you're not in a school. So how would you approach that? Talk about your process, sketch it out, and then show them what kind of deliverables you would actually produce. That's me. I've had a few of these in my time. I've actually prompted a couple of candidates to go through this for some jobs that we've posted out there during my time at agencies. We just want to see how you work. So if you are given a facilitation challenge, it's typically around either discovery or ideation workshops. So if you're not familiar with discovery and ideation workshops, go to Nielsen Norman Group, go to nngroup.com. They have an article about, they break down all the different types of workshops there and focus on the discovery and ideation workshops if you're interested in learning more about that. Even as juniors, being familiar with facilitation can really add to your stock, to your value. So you might have clients in a room and you're running a discovery workshop trying to learn more about their business and the problem. So you might ask them a few questions, you run a few exercises. Likewise with ideation, similar to what you do in the academy program, you would get people in a room, you would run crazy eights or some type of brainstorming activity to try and break down a particular problem or come up with and generate solutions. So they'll be looking at how you facilitate that. How do you manage your room? How do you keep time? How do you make decisions? And it can be a bit of fun. So again, depending on the role that you go for. This one is one of the main ones, very, very common, the take-home design challenge. So like I said before, they'll give you a particular prompt, a particular problem. I've had students of mine being given like an email, like a long type of detailed email with some instructions. They'll ask you for specific deliverables. They'll say to you things like, come back with a research plan, come back with some mock-ups, come back with your thought process. I've had students go into it where they were asked to produce some ideas and recommendations. The deliverables will be listed, and I'll show you an example shortly of a student of mine, the type of design challenge they received. And it will be time boxed. They might say to you, hey, you have 72 hours to do this, or you have a week. They'll also kind of tell you, like if I just show you the next slide, feel free to read this now. A student of mine last month, she went for a job at a bank. It's a bank, it's a financial institution. In the first sentence, it actually says that they suggest not spending more than 3 to 4 hours. That's a relief because you're probably already nervous about the job hunt. You really have your heart set on this particular job. But when they say to you, don't spend more than 3 to 4 hours, it's a good feeling. You're relieved. So you can see there, they give you a bit of a scenario. They gave her a bit of a scenario, and that third paragraph says, it says that, this is the assumed problem. Our customers are looking to securely store and retrieve their personal identification within the banking app. Great. So that gives you something to work with. But then they give you assumptions. So they're giving you something to work with. They've given things you know and assumptions. That second bullet point is key because it showed my student, it said, well, here's who you might be closely working with. So for her, in her thinking, when she presented it back to them, she really focused and emphasized on the collaboration aspect. She said, look, here's what I don't know. Here's how I will find that information. You know, if I'm asking people to upload their driver's license, well, I have to assure those people that their driver's license will be stored safely and securely. Now, I don't know anything about that. I will go and speak to the accessibility experts. I will speak to the engineers. And she spoke through that. And it shows the hiring managers, cool, you know where to go and find information, right? You're not this know-it-all type of person. That's what they're looking for. And that third point there as well, they've told you that if you do mock something up, use existing design patterns, right? So at the bottom where they say deliverables, you'll notice that second point and you might be thinking, how do we do that? Well, they asked her for a mock-up or a prototype and she was asking me, she said, well, how do I do that if I don't have any research? I said, well, it's all based on assumptions and a hypothesis. So create your project plan. That's a simple one, right? Won't take you too long. Use their existing map, their existing app, sorry, take screenshots and kind of hack it together and put something together in Figma very quickly of how this thing might work. But focus your presentation on how and why you would do things. So she focused on not the outcome, because you don't know. She focused on things like research, stakeholder management, competitive research, and then how she would test and validate this particular mock-up. And what she found in the interview was they didn't really pay too much attention to the prototype. They were paying more attention to how she was connecting this feature to business goals and to their customers. That's what they liked. She ended up getting the job, which is fantastic. But it's just an example of something they might give you that's so simple. Simple in terms of it's not 5 pages of a prompt. This was just on 1 page and an email. So she had 3 days to do this. There was plenty of time. And yeah, it went well. What we're focusing on today, very common, are the on-site or virtual whiteboard challenges. So you're in a room, there's a whiteboard behind you, they give you a prompt and you grab the marker and you start sketching out your process and talking through your process. Or doing what we're doing here, you would share your FigJam board or your Miro board and you would be given that particular prompt and you would then, same thing, go through your process and then think out loud and ask questions. So you can see here what it says on the slide. They will give you a specific problem. Sometimes it's very literal, sometimes it's very random. I've been given prompts like the head of engineering said, I'm a billionaire hotel chain owner and I want to redesign the alarm clocks in every room. Go ahead and do that. And it had nothing to do with the job I applied for. And my first question was why? And we went back and forth. And then I spoke through my process of, well, I would go and visit some of your hotels, your luxury hotels. I would go and speak to the staff. I would speak to patrons and guests, and I would visit the rooms and I would study how people behave. And I was sketching out this process, talking about my research and research processes, etc. I didn't have to mock anything up because it made no sense for that particular project, for that particular prompt. But I did talk about my process. It can be done solo or live in front of an audience. Audience just means the panel that's interviewing you. And it may be collaborative. So meaning they might bring a developer in the room, they might bring in another designer, or it just might be you on your own. And it's typically 15 minutes to an hour. It will never get to an hour. Trust me on that. If you get to 15 or 20 minutes and they see that you have a good grasp of the process and what you're sketching out and talking about makes sense, they'll just stop you there. There's no need to move forward. Right? Like they'll see how that actually works. The key here is to, and I'll give you more examples coming up, but the key with these is to think about not the end product. So don't think about the solution. All they're trying to understand is your understanding of the process. So don't go straight to solution mode. That's not the point here. Think immediately about where you would start. What's your starting point? What have you learned in this course? What have you read out there? Show them how you can think outside the box. For me, given that prompt of redesigning alarm clocks in luxury hotels, it was very odd and random. I didn't even know they were going to give that to me. But I thought logically, and I thought, well, let me talk to you first as the business owner and stakeholder to learn about your expectations and your goals. They also want to know how you command the room, right? So you don't turn your back. If you're in person, you don't turn your back on them and start writing on the whiteboard. Face them, talk, ask questions, ask for clarification, and write. And as you write, speak out loud, think out loud, and say, well, first I would go and visit the hotels. Then I would speak to your guests so I could learn about their needs and how they use the alarm clocks. I would observe people, like talk your way through it. So they want to see that. And of course, how you would sort of take command of that room. So whoever's in that room, you might have 2 or 3 people in that room. They'd also want to see how you would collaborate as well. So in my example, I was talking about how I would talk to different sort of stakeholders and the head of engineering and how I would involve people, and I'm a team player. So again, they like to know where you would start. There's no right or wrong. It's just how do you justify your starting point? How do you think visually is another point there as well, depending on the prompt they've given you. How would you get people on board? Like, how would you build consensus? They might give you a tricky problem where you have to think how you would get different departments in an organization to work together as well. So you might say, look, as a junior, I might go to my lead. I might, we'll work together. We'll try and get people in a room for a meeting. We'll try and align their goals, get everyone on the same page, and see if we can formulate some sort of win-win, way forward. So your big goal for these design challenges is to show how you would collaborate. That second one's a bit odd. We say that it's not that you have to be so highly intelligent. It just means smart in the way that you would use the process. So you understand that the process is a toolkit and you know which tools to use at any given time. Cool. So it's just trying to understand your understanding and use of the process itself. Typical format, it's a bit of a role play. They'll introduce to you a whiteboard challenge or critique, and you'll then have to write and sketch and think out loud. They'll give you some feedback. You'll go back and forth. One thing I will say, the responsibility or the onus is on you, the candidate who's applied for the job, to find out if whiteboard challenges are actually a part of the interview process. The recruitment person, whoever it is, they may or may not know, because they might be a third party, so they don't actually work for that organization. So I would encourage you to ask the question. Just say, look, how many rounds of interviews are included in this process? And if they say there's a technical interview, just say, okay, what does that entail? Is that technical interview a design challenge? Is it take home? Is it on site? What is it exactly? So get some clarification before that, so you know that, hey, round 2 is a technical interview, or round 3 is a technical interview, and you can prepare. Right, you might have a week or 2 to prepare for that. So that would be my recommendation. I've given you some points here of what you might need to think about for any given prompt. They might say to you, we're trying to redesign our, the way that we generate leads on our website for people that are applying for a credit card. So you'd have to think typically for that particular prompt what might be needed, and you might go through your assumptions, you might go through research methodologies, who your target audience might be, what the flow might be, business goals, and then some sort of metric. So on the next slide is what you should be sketching or having for yourself. This framework we actually teach at where I teach. So we've come up with this framework, and I'm sharing it with you here. You can see here it acts as a bit of a canvas. So if you are given a design challenge, you can take this and customize it any way you need to. So you'll notice here it says UI elements on that final column here. That might not be relevant for what you've been given. So you can replace this with whatever's relevant, like recommendations, design principles, competitive research. That might be something that's more relevant for what you're doing. And I'll show you an example coming up of one that I've kind of played around with. So this kind of template, again, similar to the design critique template, will keep you organized, and it will show you, because again, you might be nervous, where you will start. So you can start in the top left, similar to a lean canvas. You can write down the challenge. So if they said to you the challenge was to generate more leads for people that are trying to apply for a credit card, you can restate that challenge. You can talk to them about the UX vision, and then you can start asking questions and working through your process of how you would define the target audience, or what you currently know about the target audience, and then your assumptions, and then the research methodologies, and so on, whatever's relevant, right? So this will also keep things organized on the screen so that the hiring manager knows where to look. It will keep it clean and structured as well. Again, it just shows them you have the ability to be efficient and organized. So take a screenshot of this, sketch it on paper, whatever you need to do, recreate this in Figma, in Notion, in Miro, whatever you're using. And on the next slide, I'll give you an example prompt, and then I'll show you how simple you can just work through this, and I'll show you another example. So for example, this was one that was given to a student of mine in the US. A prominent university has come to your agency for help improving their admissions process. Currently, applications are still reviewed on paper, which often leads to clumsy communication and handoff between the review stages and their respective reviewers. How might you digitize this process for them? So it's a university, a college, accepting applications, and it's all kind of physical, and there's human error involved. How might we digitize that application process for them? So if I'm using that template, this is something that I sort of quickly put together. I thought, well, the challenge is that university admissions review process needs to be digitized, sure. And then I kind of went through it. Right? Like I would think through it, and I would get this information. Whatever information I don't have, I will get it from the person interviewing me. So I said, who's currently reviewing these applications? They said, oh, it's professors and administration staff. Awesome, I need to know that. So I wrote that down. That helps me with my research methodologies. So I would go to the universities and I would speak to the professors, speak to the administration staff, and I would talk about why I would do that, what I'm trying to learn. That is the key of these design challenges. It's not the what, but it's the why and the how. Right? So I would say things like, well, I would go and visit the campus. Why? I will talk through that. And I would even draw arrows and write that down as well. I would go and observe these professors and admin staff. Why? And who, what? And I would write that down. What am I trying to learn? So you can see how this template keeps things organized. For the primary task flow, you can sketch that out. You can have it as a list, whatever's relevant. So this template is there to help give you a starting point, to show them that you're organized, that you understand the process. And it might bring up other things. I mean, we've had cases where this template is your starting point, and then next to it you had sketches and ideation and mock-ups and whatever else. But this is kind of like the foundation. And if they see this, we've had a number of students recently, they did this, and then after 15 or 20 minutes, the hiring manager said, okay, cool, let's move on to something else. Because they could see that the student understands, or the candidate understands what they're talking about. But remember, it's a trap. Everything's hypothetical, because I'm on Zoom, I'm on Google Meet, I'm not in the university, I don't have access to it. They want me to come up with a solution in 20 minutes. So it's a hypothesis, it's based on assumptions. All I can do is show them how and why. I can't go and sketch out a wireframe and say, here's the solution. It's a trap, because then they'll say, well, how did you come up with that? You don't have any research. You didn't collaborate with anyone. You didn't do any ideation. You don't have a problem statement. How can you do that? So if they do push you to come up with some sort of wireframe, talk about your process. Just say, well, first I would look at how things are currently done. I would evaluate that. And then I would work through best practice to try and generate some type of solution that isn't too different or unfamiliar from the existing one. So you have to talk through your how and why. That is the key here. A lot of design challenges are traps, They try and sort of see how you might overcomplicate things because you're trying to impress them in a job interview naturally, but don't. Keep it as simple as possible because in the commercial world, they're trying to evaluate, can this person think efficiently and work quickly? Otherwise, it will cost us money as a business. So keep it as simple as possible, low-hanging fruit, the easiest audience type first, and only the basic features if they push you for a feature set or a mock-up of some sort. Right? So you can see here in this example, we're not talking about like AI and robotics and replacing professors. We're not saying anything like that. From the information they gave us, we said they reviewed 100 to 200 applications, say, per month. And based on that, here's the sort of earliest minimum viable product that we can produce. And they love to hear that. And here's how something might look if you're in a physical space or even on your Fig Jamboard. It doesn't have to be pretty, but don't make it sloppy. Because again, it has to be legible. They have to understand what you're saying. So it could be something like this for what's relevant to what you've been given. And if you pre-prepared a template in FigJam earlier or Miro, then you just have to fill in the blanks. Right? And you can have a student of mine had that in FigJam, and what they also did on the side, they had like a kind of like a timeline graphic that they'd created, and they would reference that. They would say, well, here's how I would do this, and here's how I would do that. And they had examples of like a research plan. They had examples of them conducting some research. Like they were very smart in how they did it. They just basically borrowed from their case study and they just pasted it there for the job interview because they found it relevant. And so the hiring manager could see their process, but also how they've actually done it in the past, and they could justify their approach. Anyway, over to you. We'll see how we go with this. We might put you in breakouts. I'll give that a go. And if it breaks, then we'll come back and do it as a group. Basically, what I'll do, I'll give you a design prompt on the next slide, and you can play around with this template and see what works for you, and role play with each other. Basically, we probably won't do 20 minutes for this. We'll do maybe 15 minutes where one person will play the role of the interviewer and the other person will be the interviewee, and then you'll swap. Right? Or you can do it together. I mean, whatever you like. You'll be introduced to the prompt, and then you'll have to go through Q&A, like ask each other questions, try and role play it as best as you can. But the whole point here is just to practice and get familiar with this template and see how it works for you. We'll do that. If you have pen and paper, please use that. It's faster, it's quicker. If you've already taken a screenshot of that template and thrown it into FigJam, great. Just type over it, use that, it's fine. I don't mind. Your design prompt is this. It's a small business, and the small business customers need to book a consultation with a business banker from their app. You can take a screenshot of this or write it down for yourselves. They currently phone into our business banking team looking for advice to grow their business, leading to long wait times and not finding the right specialist for their query. How might you streamline this process for them considering their business goals? That's an image of a bakery, but imagine the business, small business could be anything. Could be a hairdresser, could be, I don't know, I like bakeries. It could be a hairdresser, could be any small business that is in your city. So think of it like that. Would it be different for different small businesses? Maybe, maybe not. So using that prompt, and you can use this template, customize, tailor this anyway for any way you need for that particular prompt. And then I'll show you the example I did on the next slide. Don't judge me too critically on that. So we'll do that. Let me see if I can put you in breakouts. And if you are in a breakout with 3 people, just role play that. So two of you would be the hiring managers, and the other person would be the candidate. Thumbs up. Cool. Are we okay with that? Awesome. Lovely. Let's see how we go with breakouts. Great. So many thumbs up. Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. I'll give you a moment to get settled in, create this template if you need to. Get your paper and pen ready. All right, cool. Hopefully no one's by themselves. Let's see how we go. If you are by yourself, please come back. And actually, let's try this again. A few people are leaving, so we have to. All right. If you are by yourself, please come back and I'll keep you company. So the breakout rooms should be open. And then we'll come back and look at the example. Let's close the breakout rooms because people are leaving. So we'll do that. Sorry, just closing breakout rooms because there are people on their own. So we'll just do it here together, if that's okay. All right, cool. So using that prompt of the business customers looking to find a consultant for their growing business, what you could do with that as you work through that problem with whoever's in that room, what you can do is, and this is something I'll put together very quickly, so you can have a look at this, how I would use this. I haven't put anything visual here because my thinking for this was, well, it's more of a strategy sort of design prompt, right? So I'm not really interested in sketching anything out because I don't know what needs to be sketched out. They're asking me in the prompt, these customers are in the app, in the banking app, and they're trying to connect with some sort of business consultant from the bank. Now, I don't know if they're trying to find their profile or if they're using a calendar. I'm not really sure if they're calling. So I need that information from the actual hiring managers, whoever's in that room with me. So if I have that information, then I might be able to work through. So I would try and clarify with the hiring managers. I'd say, look, well, you've told me that they're small business owners. Great. But I might take it further and say, well, what type of small business owners are there? So they might say, well, most of our business owners are, retail stores. Great. Well, that gives me something to work with. I will also try and clarify, well, they're saying they're trying to scale their business. What makes you think that? So whatever information I'm missing, I'll try and extract that from them. And then we'll try and work through together to populate as much of this template as I can. So I would also try and sketch out my process. So at the top, I might say things like, I'd start here and then I'd draw an arrow and I'd do the next thing. And I'd show them like a timeline of my actual design process. You can do that using the double diamond design process, the design thinking process, the UX process, whatever's going to help you for that particular prompt. But they haven't really asked me here to design a mock-up. They said, how might you streamline this sort of relationship between the customer and a business banker? So there's that. Have a look at this. I'm going to just give you full access so you can jump in and ask questions because we do have time. So why not? Cool. You should be able to access your microphones. I think that it was disabled by default, but hey, Sonia, do you have a question?
Hi, yes. For the persona, I was thinking maybe the business banker could also be considered.
They are, absolutely, yeah. I just haven't gone too crazy with this template, but you're right. You could tell them that, look, I would assume the customer is the primary persona and the business banker is the secondary persona. And in my assumptions, I've said, that if you look at the assumptions box, I said, I'm assuming there are enough bankers to take calls, because maybe the bank isn't telling me everything honestly. The bank's just saying there are long wait times, but maybe the assumption is too many customers are calling in, or there's not enough bankers to take the calls. So I have to research with both. So I would interview customers, I would interview business bankers, spelling mistake, to try and define whether, like, maybe from my research, the banker is the primary persona. I don't know, but I'm sure I'm sure the hiring managers would love to hear my explanation and justification. But yes, good thought. No, good thought. Jason and then Aurelia. Jason, question. Sorry, I can't hear you, Jason. It's there's no audio.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry. I'm wondering if you could just briefly explain in more detail that primary task flow section of this template here. Are you outlining the task flow as it is when you're there, or is that the proposed task flow? It's not the proposed task flow, is it?
Yeah, so it could be if you're given a different type of prompt. For me, this is the current flow. So I would, similar to what you would do in a discovery workshop, I would talk to the hiring managers in that room and say, so from what you're explaining, is this flow, does this flow make sense? So I would write down the current flow, and then I would say, here's why I'm writing down the current flow, because I'm trying to identify gaps in this flow based on the problem that you've given me. So my thinking with this flow is, at which point do I assume I can make the earliest intervention and find a solution? That's my thinking. So yeah, it's a current flow.
And it's useful in these situations with hiring managers and such to show them that based on just a general prompt, you're able to dissect and figure out what the flow would be as it is today for them.
Yes, because you could then say to them, based on this being the current flow, whatever we design later as a solution, we'd have to compare it to this, because this flow is our baseline, and then the proposed flow, we'll sort of put them on top of each other to see what the difference is. That way it gives us something to measure. So we might say, for example, our research might show us that there's an extra step in this flow, or there's a step missing. So the flow shows us what we can kind of streamline and measure in the end. The other thing is here, which I don't mention, but you could take it further. You could say, how do we gauge customer satisfaction and frustration as well? Because long wait times, and if they disconnect, how are they feeling? How many customers are leaving us because their call's never taken? These are questions you can ask in this, and you could go down a rabbit hole. But the flow for me makes sense. I've just done it in a list. You could actually make it visual, might work better.
Cool, thank you.
That always start with the proposed flow and the proposed problem first. Yeah, cool. I'll go to Aurelia and then Anna.
Hi. I had a question about what you just said. Did you say that the interviewers or the panel will give us the current flow?
You'd have to get the information from them, because so for example, if I go back to the prompt doesn't give us everything, right? The prompt just says, look, here's what's currently happening. So the way I think, I want to know how it's currently moving. So I would ask them questions and say, look, here's my assumption around the current flow. What do you think? Does this sound right? And you'll kind of see what they say. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a quick example. We ran a workshop once with this company who was selling freight containers online. You could buy a freight container and then customize it. You could design it. But in the room, we had different stakeholders. We had marketing, sales, and product people. they weren't on the same page. So my team and I, we asked them questions. How do people currently find and customize your freight containers? And as they were speaking, we were sketching out the task flow. And the task flow seemed so complicated. When they all stopped talking, they could see it. And I said, okay, that's your current task flow from what you said. Does that seem right? They just all looked at each other and thought, yeah, it is. I said, great. So here's a potential gap. Here's a potential gap. Here's where we can start. Here's where we can talk to customers. And seeing that flow, would make sense. It also helps you clarify if they're actually telling you the truth.
Okay. So kind of guess at it and then ask them to confirm. Is that right?
Either or, yes. Either guess at it based on the prompt they've given you, or say to them, I'm going to ask you some questions to help me define the flow because, and then tell them the because. And they would love that because you're involving them, you're collaborating with them, you're thinking about the business, and as they're giving you answers, you can start sketching out the flow based on their answers. Because if you do that, then it's theirs and not yours, if that makes sense.
Yes.
What you want, because that way you can hold them accountable as well.
Right. Just two quick questions about the procedural. So as you're asking them the questions, should you write the questions on the board or just the answers? Because that's a lot of writing and you would turn your back to them.
Yeah, you don't have to write the questions. For you, the questions kind of happen organically based on the prompt, but write the answers or just summarize them into like this sort of template. Like that, when you ask them who their ideal small business owner is, they might give you a 3-minute answer. And I might just write down hairdresser and IT business. So similar to what you would do in a standard user interview, just put on your user interview hat and just summarize their answer because you have limited space here and you want to keep it concise and efficient.
Okay, and then I think I asked this in the chat. So if I show up to an in-person whiteboard challenge, I can bring a piece of paper or have this in my notebook to refer to, and they won't think that I'm, haven't memorized it, for a more mid to senior kind of whiteboard.
No, anything. The one thing I would always pay attention to when I was hiring people was if the candidate walks in empty-handed or their hands in their pocket, it gives me the wrong vibe. But if they walk in with a journal or a book or a diary or a laptop or a folder or something like that, I know this candidate means business potentially. So let's put them to the test. So yes, you're allowed to bring a laptop with you. You're allowed to don't take a piece of paper, take an actual journal or a book, look organized.
Okay.
Like that's a good sign for them. It's good first impression. And then you'll say, look, I've brought my own resources with me. I'm going to refer to my resources and we'll break down this problem together. They love that.
And then, no, I think that was it. I think, yeah, it was about writing down the questions and then bringing it in. And then how about if it's online, would you just open up your template in Miro or FigJam?
Sure. Share your screen and just say, look, here's how I like to work. This helps me. This framework helps me break down the problems, and then again, they would like to see that. That's just it's good organization.
Okay, I thought I would be cheating, so that's why I'm asking.
No, look, I mean, recruitment managers worth their money will tell you that it's you need to be prepared and come prepared. It's a good sign. But no cheating. It's not cheating.
Okay, thank you so much.
Cool, all good. Anna, sorry to keep you waiting.
It's okay. I know a lot of people have questions. I know this presentation kind of went a little bit quick, but sorry, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I guess like for this is for in person, right? This is design challenge, like if it was in person. Are you supposed to like memorize this template? I think, or can you like have it? What she said, what I think Oriella said, like you can have it in your notebook as a template and bring it in person, right?
What you should have already, and if you don't, do it this weekend. If you use Miro or FigJam or Notion, you create a page for yourself, a new frame, and have these sorts of templates there ready. Have some notes, have like a cheat sheet, have something in there that will help you prepare so that you can refer to it and practice. The best thing to do with this is to practice. There are problem generators out there, right? Like you can come up with a random problem and practice this. Practice with a friend. So
Mhm.
yeah, have it up in your board somewhere so
Okay.
that you can refer to it.
Also, like just like a really small question. This is just like something I noticed on the template. I don't know if were you the one who wrote the recommendations or did this like challenge example? So like when you said like bankers schedules regular health checks with customers, like how would that be a recommendation? I guess I was trying to connect it to how that would help with the
I was thinking about how, because customers in this prompt, we're assuming customers only reach out to the business banker when they need something. And the business banker, like most banks, don't reach out to the customer unless they're trying to sell you something. So I thought, how do we build this relationship from day one? So the banker might schedule a quarterly check-in with the customer. Say, hey, how's business going in this quarter? Hey, tax time's coming up. How are you feeling? Hey, there's a competitor that's open down the road from you. How are you feeling? What can we do? It's that. I just thought that might.
okay.
But again, these are assumptions.
I thought you said, when I said health, I thought I meant like actual physical health. I think wellness would probably be like a better word. It's like a wellness check between like the bankers and the customers. So
it's a pulse check, a business pulse check, health
okay.
check.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
A physical health check might be relevant for the right business, right? So
yeah, that makes sense.
if you're a physio or a chiropractor and you're in bad health, well then it's not going to help your own clients.
Okay, yeah, I'm done with my questions. Thank you so much.
Cool, all good. Amara.
Yes. So I just have one question regarding the challenge. Do you think it's a good idea to convert our assumed problem into how might we statement, or we can just let it be?
No, you can if you're given enough information. Like they might actually give you a problem statement. They might say, small business customers need to engage with a banker who has industry knowledge so that whatever. If they give you those sorts of information, you can then say, in order for me to generate a solution, I would formulate this sort of opportunity statement. How might we X? So it depends on what the prompt is and how much information you have. The whole point is use the UX process to your advantage, right? Remember, it's a toolkit around your waist. Just pull out the tools that you need at any given time. Yes.
Right. Got it. Because I was currently reading Sprint by Jake Knapp. So in that one, they were actually, that was the process, because you did explain, in this template, almost all the process they were doing, like creating maps or how to block the information and everything. So that's what they were doing. Like if there was a question or there was a problem, so they were converting that into how might we. So I was just assuming like if we should also do the same, so it will be, much more proper to move forward.
Yes, but remember, they have the stakeholder with them on Monday. On the first day, the stakeholder's there and they can conduct research with them. So in phase 3, they're able to define and do that. But but you can talk your way through how you would do that.
Understood. Okay.
Because you don't have access. Yeah. So, but yes, absolutely. Keep reading. That book's amazing. The process there is amazing. But yes, remember, they have research on hand.
Exactly. Yeah. Got it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi again. Sorry. 2 more questions. I noticed that in this template you put stakeholders business, but in a previous template you had put like devices and locations. How do you know? Like, is this something you would just think on the spot to prioritize?
Yeah, it's kind of like you thinking outside the box. I guess for this one, I didn't put devices and locations because I just didn't think it would be relevant. I just thought, well, you're a small business owner. I don't know if you're on the app, so it's assumed that you're using the app on your phone. I don't need to clarify that it's an app on the phone because they've already told me. And I'm assuming they're being honest. So I just thought stakeholders, because that would show them who I would actually go and engage with. And if I told them that I would go and speak to the product team to learn about the current limitations of the app, and I would go and speak to the engineers to see what the technical constraints are, that might score me more points. So, and the support team, because like, why aren't they answering the call? Why are there long wait times? I thought that would be more important than, but you might have both. That might be relevant. So,
okay.
It depends on the prompt you've been given and the information. These prompts are very simple. Like this doesn't have a lot of information, but if you're like if you're this one, if it's this one from my student at the bank, this one gives you a bit more information. So you can play around with this. Plus you're given 3 days for this one, not 20 minutes. So.
Okay, and one more thing. If this is like a live, design challenge, what would be like an average time to complete it? Like, I wonder if, 1 hour is too much.
1 hour is definitely too much. Look, they might give you an hour for the technical interview. It might be 20 minutes of a design challenge, 20 minutes of Q&A and discussion. It could be anything, but you'd have to clarify that, because some jobs will require you to go through a more in-depth technical round, and others not so much. So it could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and sometimes it's like 30 minutes, but try and clarify that as early as possible with whoever's posted the job.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. We're just almost out of time. So you will get access to the PDF. Please go through the appendix. The appendix does have a few bits and pieces, tips and advice, but it also has this resources slide for anyone looking to do some more work, more practice. There are some tools in there as well about how to practice and what sort of structure as well. Any more questions, catch me on LinkedIn. I might bump into you on Discord somewhere. Otherwise, I will see you on LinkedIn. And thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for the questions. Enjoy.
Thank you, John. This was great.
Pleasure. I'll see you around. Bye-bye.
John, do you have time for one last question? If not, I could email or LinkedIn you.
Hey, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. I know you said like don't fall into the trap of them like asking you to like for a sketch or like a wireframe. Are there ever challenges that specifically they like where they want to see and have you show them like your process through everything, but also a general like here's a quick like the 3 critical screens or something?
Yes, if you've applied for a job that is mainly leaning towards UI. So I had a student last week went for a UX designer job, but the job itself was more UI. And what they gave them was their own style guide, their own design system, their design patterns. And they asked them to kind of quickly mock something together. And so they had to do that, but that was more relevant to that particular job. But they sketched that out first, working with, I can't remember who else was in that room, but they had to collaborate with someone in that room, and they role played that. And there was no right or wrong answer, but they just wanted to see how they would collaborate, how they would think things through and co-design, and then how they would use the existing design patterns, the existing design system, to put something together. And they were also looking to see how they would think through content, because UX writing was a small part of that prompt as well, or the job.
I see, yeah.
So yeah, it can. If the role is more UI heavy, they might get you to do that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. This is really helpful. Appreciate all your time to help. Bye.
Pleasure. Thanks for sticking around. Bye.